Okay, today's we're going to be talking about determinants of demand. In other words, things that will cause the whole demand curve to shift to the left or to the right. So just a review, ceteris paribus, other things constant, places a limitation on the application of the law of demand was the only variable that the law of demand accounts for. It accounts for changes in what? Try and remember yesterday. Changes in price. Other variables that are not accounted for include changes in taste, prices for other things, income, even the weather. And that's the sort of thing that we're calling determinants of demand that shift the curve to the left or the right, and that's what we're going to be dealing with today. So a shift in demand is the graphical representation of the effect of anything other than price on the demand or quantity demanded. So changes in quantity demanded, as we saw yesterday, look like that. When there's a price change, there's a movement along the curve. But a change in demand itself, meaning anything other than price affecting it, would be a shift. So we see the entire curve shifting, in this case, to the left. The original curve in orange, the second curve in blue. And that's what we're going to be doing and graphing today. This is a shift of the curve, which is a change in the determinants of demand. So, some examples of determinants of demand: changes in consumer income, change in the number of buyers, change in consumer tastes or needs, changes in the price of related goods, and change in consumer expectations for future prices. Okay, so we're going to look, take that worksheet that you were given, we'll call it the cheat sheet, take a look at that, and you'll see what happens to demand if consumers increase, or the number of consumers increase. As you can see, if the number of consumers increase, demand shifts to the right. If you look at the fine print, you can see D1, D2. Demand has moved to the right. And when the number of consumers decrease, demand shifts to the left. Now, what you need to figure out first, the only thing you need to fill out here in your cheat sheet is the number of consumers in a market, the relationship between the number of consumers in a market and demand is what? Is it inversely related or directly related? Circle the correct answer on your sheet. Hopefully you have the correct answer, and that is, since the numbers of consumers go up and as a result demand goes up, that is a direct relationship, not an inverse relationship. So that's the one you should have circled. So let's practice this determinant of demand. Change in number of consumers in the market. If the number of consumers in the market for a product increases, the demand for that product will increase as well. If the number of consumers in the market for a product decreases, the demand for the product will decrease. If a new high school is built in the same block as a fast food restaurant, the demand for the fast food restaurant's products will do what? Hopefully you got the correct answer. If an automobile manufacturing plant near the fast food restaurant closes, the demand for the restaurant's products will what? Decrease. A decrease in demand. Hopefully you got that question correct. A product, okay, so a new determinant of demand. A change in consumer preference for a product. You can see it on your sheet. When a product becomes more preferred, quite naturally, the demand for that product increases. And of course, when that product goes out of style, guess what? The demand for that product. But it could also be weather that changes people's desire or preference for something. Today, while I'm recording this, it's raining, which means all of a sudden the demand for umbrellas would be going up. All of a sudden people prefer to have umbrellas because they need it. And so it can be something as simple as the weather that changes a preference one way or the other. So again, what kind of relationship is this? That when consumer preferences increase, demand increases. We would call that a what kind of relationship? Hopefully you circled direct. So, some examples. That one's pretty straightforward, so we're going to try this one. If fashion and celebrity magazines and websites are showing short skirts, the demand for short skirts will do what? Increase. If fashion and celebrity magazines and websites show very few pictures of Omega watches, or stop showing them altogether, what would happen to the demand for these watches, do you think? Decrease. Hopefully you got that correct. Okay, now on the next page in your cheat sheet, unfortunately I did not provide a box for this, but you will need to put this definition of normal goods somewhere in the margins. Sorry, I forgot to put a box for it. But put this definition. Normal goods are any goods for which demand increases when income increases and fall when income decreases. In other words, just plain old normal everyday goods, which when you get more money, you want to buy more things, which is the opposite of inferior goods, which we'll get to later. Some examples: any good or service whose demand behaves according to the law of demand. That's a normal good. So some examples of normal goods compared to inferior goods, which we'll get into later. Name brand items, new cars, sit-down restaurant food, brand name goods and services, new clothes, fresh vegetables. These are all examples of normal goods. Get that written in your cheat sheet somewhere in the margin. Again, sorry I didn't provide a box for you. So, when you have more money, you buy more normal goods. When you have less money, you buy less normal goods. That's the way they function. So, in your cheat sheet, what kind of relationship is there between income, consumer income, and normal goods? Hopefully you circled direct, because that's the correct answer. Okay, so an example. If workers at a manufacturing facility sign a new contract that provides a 5% raise for those workers, these workers will have more income and their demand for goods and services will do what? Increase. Another example. If Social Security taxes increase for employers, employees, consumers will have less take-home pay, and as a result, their demand for goods and services will do what? Decrease. Okay, now for inferior goods. These are trickier. In the box at the bottom of your cheat sheet, go ahead and write this definition. Any goods for which demand decreases when income increases, and increases when income decreases. That is an inferior good. In other words, any good or service whose demand behaves inversely to the law of demand. So that gives you your answer right away to which one to circle in the box. This is an inverse relationship between income and demand. So examples of inferior goods, again, these need to be put in the box at the bottom of your sheet. Used cars or public transportation, for example. Fast food, secondhand clothing, top ramen or boxed mac and cheese, off-brand generic goods and services, canned vegetables. These are all things that if someone had more money to spend, they wouldn't buy these. If you have enough money to drive your own car, why would you take public transportation? If you had enough money to buy a new car, why would you buy a used car? If you had enough money to sit down and have healthy food, why would you buy fast food? Realizing, of course, that on a day-to-day basis, sometimes people will have a craving for one of these things. Nevertheless, these are examples of inferior goods as far as economists are concerned, because the overall trend of an economy is that these are things that people buy less of when they have more money. hopefully you have those in your example box. Okay, so as we said, if your income goes up, what happens to demand for things of inferior goods? Goes down. When your income decreases, what happens to your demand for inferior goods? It increases. We've already filled that out. All right. Again, let's try it. For example, if workers at a manufacturing facility sign a new contract that provides a 5% raise, these workers will have more money to purchase healthy foods. So the demand for top ramen will do what? If Social Security taxes increase for employees, consumers will have less take-home pay, and as a result, their demand for top ramen will do what? Okay, another determinant of demand. Change in price of related goods. So first we need to define some of these related goods. And what we mean by related goods are substitute goods and complementary goods. So we'll start with substitute goods. When there's a change in price of substitute goods. Put this definition in the substitute goods box. This is the definition of substitute goods. Products similar enough that they can replace each other. And then, for example, here we have a number of starches. Bread, rice, potato, pasta. These things can replace one another in a meal and serve the same nutritional value, more or less. And so that's what we mean by substitute. Same with Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic. They serve pretty much the same income bracket and have a generally same level of quality. So, Nike, Adidas, again, more examples that you can put for substitutes. Dutch Brothers versus Starbucks, again, examples of substitutes. Any green vegetable, substitute each other. So, imagine we're talking about the demand for green beans. If the price of broccoli goes way down, somebody on a budget is likely, instead of buying those green beans, now they're going to switch over to broccoli, which means the demand for green beans is going to go down. And vice versa. If the price of broccoli goes way up, then again the demand for green beans is likely to go up as well, because rather than buy broccoli, they're going to buy green beans instead, since it's cheaper than the broccoli. So here we see a direct relationship between the price of substitute goods and the demand for a substitute. So in your cheat sheet, go ahead and put direct. Now, here's some examples. There's a decrease in the price of BMW sedans. What would that cause to the demand for a Lexus of comparable value and stature? Okay, what would happen? Demand would decrease. Imagine there's an increase in the price of iPhones. What would that do to the demand for Samsung Galaxy phones? Cause an increase. Price of a good and the demand for the substitute are positively related, or directly related. Okay, now complementary goods. Go ahead and put the definition in your box on your sheet. Goods or services that are typically used together or purchased together. And some examples would include peanut butter and jelly, toothpaste and toothbrush, anything that goes into a hamburger. Certainly hamburger buns and hamburger meat, these are complementary goods. Oil and an oil funnel or oil in a car, these are complementary goods. These things tend to be correlated. battery-operated toys and batteries. These are complementary goods. So what happens is, if the price of a hamburger increases, demand for hamburger buns is going to decrease, because if hamburgers are too expensive to buy the meat for, who's going to buy buns if they don't have hamburger meat? And vice versa, if the price of hamburger meat goes way down and becomes very inexpensive meat, well then of course people are going to start buying more hamburger buns, so that would increase the demand for hamburger buns. So price of a complementary goods compared to the demand of its complementary, what is the relationship? And of course the answer is inverse relationship. So, for example, a decrease in the price of strawberries will cause a blank in the demand for whipped cream. It could cause a increase in the demand for whipped cream. Increase in the price of hamburger will cause a blank in the demand for hamburger buns. Hopefully you got that. Decrease. Price of a good and service and demand are inversely related, as we said. Okay. Lastly, consumer expectations. When consumers expect the price of a good or service to go up in the future, demand now will go up. In other words, if you're afraid the price of something that you really want to buy is going to be even higher in the future, you're going to want to buy now. So demand for that product will go up now. Consumers expect prices to go down in the future. Demand now will go down. What kind of relationship is that? It's a direct relationship. Okay, so if consumers expect the price of gas to double in a week, will they buy more or less gas now? You'll buy more gas now. Fill up all those gas tanks. If consumers expect the price of laptops to be cut by half next month, will they buy more or less laptops now? They're going to buy less. They'll postpone their purchases until the expected decrease in price occurs.